The letter sat in my dresser drawer for 20 years. 20 years. I walked past that dresser every single day, got dressed every morning knowing it was there. That yellow envelope with my daughter's handwriting on the front. I could have opened it at any time, could have read whatever she wanted to tell me, but I didn't, because I was angry, because I was hurt, because I was too proud to admit I might have been wrong. And by the time I finally opened it, it was too late to fix what I had broken. My name is Nanny. I'm 71 years old now, and this is the story of the worst fight I ever had with my daughter. The fight that made her leave home at 17. The letter she sent me the next day that I refused to open, and what I found inside when I finally read it 2 decades later. My daughter Rebecca was always a difficult child. Strong-willed, independent, stubborn as a mule. She got that from me, though I would never have admitted it back then. From the time she was little, we butted heads. About everything. About what she wore, who she hung out with, how she spent her time. I thought I was being a good mother, setting boundaries, keeping her safe. Looking back now, I think I was just trying to control her. When Rebecca was in elementary school, we would fight about simple things. She wanted to wear mismatched socks to school. I said no, people would think I didn't take care of her. She wanted to cut her hair short like a boy. I said no, little girls should have long, pretty hair. She wanted to play soccer instead of take ballet lessons. I said no, soccer was too rough and she would get hurt. Every single decision became a battle of wills, and I always won, because I was the mother, because I had the power, because I thought that's what parenting meant. Looking back, I can see how I was already setting up the dynamic that would eventually destroy our relationship. It wasn't about what was best for Rebecca, it was about me being in control, me being right, me making sure she understood that I was the authority. I didn't see her as a person with her own thoughts and feelings and desires. I saw her as an extension of me, someone I could mold into the daughter I wanted, instead of accepting the daughter I had. Rebecca's father, my first husband Tom, died when she was 12 years old. Heart attack. Sudden, devastating. One day he was here, coaching her softball team and helping her with homework. The next day he was gone. It destroyed both of us, but we grieved differently. I shut down, became strict and overprotective. Rebecca acted out, became rebellious and angry. We needed each other, but we just pushed each other away. Tom had been the buffer between us. When Rebecca and I fought, he would step in, calm things down, help us both see the other's perspective. He had this way of making us both feel heard. After he died, there was no one to mediate anymore. No one to soften my harsh edges or help Rebecca understand why I was the way I was. We were just two grieving people who didn't know how to reach each other anymore. I remember the first few months after Tom died, Rebecca would come home from school and go straight to her room. I could hear her crying through the door, but I didn't know what to say to comfort her. I was drowning in my own grief, barely holding it together enough to go to work and keep the house running. I didn't have anything left to give her emotionally, so I did what I knew how to do. I made rules. I set boundaries. I controlled what I could control because everything else felt so out of control. The teenage years were brutal. Rebecca started dating boys I didn't approve of, stayed out past curfew, got caught drinking at a party when she was 16. Normal teenage stuff, really. But to me, still raw from losing Tom, it felt like I was losing her, too. Like she was slipping away and I couldn't hold on. So I gripped tighter, made more rules, became more controlling, and she pulled further away. Every boyfriend she brought home, I found something wrong with. This one was too old. That one had no ambition. This one came from a bad family. That one had a motorcycle, which was too dangerous. I told myself I was protecting her, that I knew better than her teenage brain what was good for her. But really, I think I was terrified of her growing up, of her leaving me like Tom had left me, of being alone. So I tried to keep her small, keep her under my control, keep her from becoming independent. When Rebecca got caught drinking at that party when she was 16, I grounded her for 3 months. 3 months. No phone, no friends, no going anywhere except school. She begged me to reconsider, said it was just one mistake, that all her friends were doing it, that I was being unreasonable. But I didn't care. I told her actions have consequences, that she needed to learn respect, that this was for her own good. What I didn't say, what I didn't even realize at the time, was that I was punishing her for scaring me, for reminding me that she was growing up and I couldn't protect her from everything, for making me feel like I was failing as a mother. Those 3 months drove a wedge between us that never really healed. Rebecca stopped talking to me about anything real, stopped trying to share her life with me. Because why would she? Everything she did was wrong in my eyes. Every choice she made, I criticized. Every friend she had, I questioned. I had become the enemy instead of the support, the warden instead of the mother. And I couldn't see it. Couldn't see how I was pushing away the only family I had left. By the time Rebecca was 17, we were barely speaking. She would come home from school, go straight to her room, only come out for dinner. We would sit at the table in silence, this thick tension between us. I wanted to reach out to her, wanted to ask about her day, her friends, her life, but I didn't know how anymore. The wall between us had gotten too high. I would try sometimes, would ask her questions at dinner. How was school? She would say, fine. Did anything interesting happen? She would say, nope. How are your friends? She would say, they're fine. It was like talking to a stranger. This girl I had carried in my body, nursed and raised and loved. She had become someone I didn't know, and I didn't know how to bridge the gap between us anymore.
Then came the fight, the big one, the one that changed everything. It was a Friday night in October of 2004. Rebecca was a senior in high school. She came home around 6 and told me she was going to a party that night. I said no. I didn't like the boy who was throwing it, didn't trust the crowd that would be there, didn't want her out late on a school night. She said it wasn't a school night, it was Friday. I said that didn't matter. She was not going. The boy throwing the party was named Jake Morrison. I knew his family. His older brother had been arrested for drug possession a few years earlier. His father was known around town as a drinker. I had decided, based on nothing but my own prejudice and fear, that Jake was bad news, that anyone associated with that family was trouble. Never mind that Jake himself had never been in any trouble. Never mind that Rebecca had known him since elementary school and insisted he was a good person. I had made up my mind, and that was that. Rebecca stood there in our kitchen, her face getting red, her hands balling into fists. She said I never let her do anything, that I treated her like a child, that all her friends got to have normal lives, but I kept her trapped. I said if her friends' parents let them run wild, that was their problem, that I was trying to keep her safe, that she should be grateful to have a mother who cared. She laughed, actually laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. She said, "Care? You don't care about me. You care about controlling me. There's a difference." I felt like she had slapped me. After everything I'd done for her, after raising her alone for 5 years after Tom died, after working double shifts to keep our house, after sacrificing everything to give her a good life, and she had the nerve to say I didn't care? The truth is, I had been working double shifts. I was a nurse, and after Tom died, I picked up extra shifts to make ends meet, to keep our house, to save for Rebecca's college. I was exhausted all the time, running on no sleep and too much coffee and the constant stress of being a single parent. And I told myself I was doing it for Rebecca, for her future, for her security. But looking back, I think I was also hiding from my grief, hiding from the empty house that reminded me Tom was gone, hiding from the daughter I didn't know how to talk to anymore. Work was easier than facing what I had lost. I said some things I shouldn't have said. Told her she was ungrateful, selfish, that she had no idea how hard I worked to provide for her, that she was just like her father, stubborn and impossible. I don't know why I brought Tom into it. That was cruel. But I was hurt and angry, and the words just came out. Rebecca's face changed when I mentioned her dad, went from angry to something else, something cold and hard. She said, "Don't you dare talk about Dad like that. He actually loved me. He didn't try to control every single thing I did. He trusted me. But you don't trust anyone. You're so scared of losing control that you're going to end up alone." Those words hit me like a physical blow, because somewhere deep down I knew she was right. I was scared. Scared of losing her like I lost Tom, scared of something bad happening to her, scared of being alone. And I was dealing with that fear by trying to control everything, by making rules and setting boundaries and keeping her in a box where I thought she would be safe. But all I was really doing was suffocating her, pushing her away, making her hate me. I told her if she walked out that door to go to that party, she shouldn't bother coming back. I was trying to scare her, trying to make her back down, trying to win the fight. But Rebecca just looked at me with these cold eyes and said, "Fine." She went to her room. I heard her moving around, opening drawers or closet doors sliding open. I thought she was just being dramatic. Figured she would cool down in an hour and come apologize. Teenagers always made empty threats like this. She'd sleep it off, and tomorrow we'd both pretend this never happened. That's what I told myself, standing in that kitchen, my heart pounding, my hands shaking with anger and hurt. But then she came out with a duffel bag packed with clothes. She walked right past me without saying a word, opened the front door, and left. I stood there in shock. She had actually left, actually packed a bag and walked out. Part of me wanted to run after her, to apologize, to beg her to come back. But my pride wouldn't let me. She was the one who was wrong. She was the one being disrespectful. She'd realize her mistake and come home. I just had to wait her out.
I remember standing at the window, watching her walk down our driveway. She didn't look back, not once. Just kept walking with that duffel bag over her shoulder until she turned the corner and disappeared. And I stood there thinking,
She'll be back by midnight. She'll come home when she realizes she has nowhere else to go. I was so sure of it, so certain that I had won, that my ultimatum had worked, even if she was too stubborn to admit it right away. But she didn't come home that night, or the next day. I called her cell phone probably 50 times. It went straight to voicemail. I called her friends, but they said they hadn't seen her. I was starting to panic, starting to realize this wasn't just teenage drama. She was really gone. By Saturday afternoon, I was frantic. I drove around town looking for her, checked the park where she used to hang out with friends, drove past Jake Morrison's house, went to the mall, the library, every place I could think of. Nothing. It was like she had vanished. And with every hour that passed, my panic grew. What if something had happened to her? What if she was hurt or in trouble? What if the last words we ever said to each other were said in anger? On Sunday, 2 days after the fight, I got a call from Rebecca. She was staying with her friend Michelle's family. She was safe. She said she needed space, that she would come get the rest of her things later. I asked when she was coming home. She said she wasn't. She said she couldn't live with me anymore, that it was too hard, too toxic, that we both needed time apart. I begged her to reconsider, told her we could work it out, but my voice was cold even as I said it, still angry, still proud, still convinced I was right. Rebecca said she had to go and hung up. I stood there holding the phone, my hand shaking, realizing what I had done. I had pushed my daughter away, my only child, the only family I had left after Tom died, and I had lost her. Michelle's parents, I learned later, had been hesitant to let Rebecca stay. They called me that Sunday afternoon, after I spoke with Rebecca. Michelle's mother, Susan, said they didn't want to get in the middle of a family conflict. But Rebecca had shown up Friday night, crying, saying she couldn't go home. They couldn't just turn her away. Susan asked me what happened, if we could work it out. I told her, my voice tight with anger, that Rebecca had been disrespectful and defiant, that she needed to learn consequences. Susan was quiet for a moment, then said, "She's welcome here as long as she needs. But Linda, maybe you should think about what kind of consequences you're creating here." Then she hung up. The letter came on Monday, 3 days after the fight. I saw it in the mailbox when I got home from work. Yellow envelope, Rebecca's handwriting on the front, just Mom in her messy script. No return address. My hand shook as I held it. This was it. Her explanation. Maybe an apology, maybe a way for us to fix this. But I didn't open it. I was still too angry, still too hurt. I took that letter inside and I put it in my dresser drawer. Told myself I would read it when I was ready, when she had learned her lesson, when she came crawling back, apologizing for disrespecting me. I was teaching her a lesson about consequences, about respect, about not running away when things got hard. I remember holding that letter in my kitchen, looking at my name written in her handwriting. Part of me wanted to rip it open right then, to read what she had to say, to find some path back to each other. But another part of me, the hurt and angry part, said no. She walked on you. She chose to leave. She doesn't get to just write a letter and make everything okay. She needs to come home and apologize in person, face to face, like an adult. Reading this letter would be giving in, showing weakness, letting her win. So I put it in my drawer, walked away from it, and told myself I was doing the right thing. Days turned into weeks.
Rebecca stayed with Michelle's family. I saw her sometimes around town. She would look away when she saw me, wouldn't acknowledge me at all. It broke my heart, but I was too stubborn to make the first move. I kept thinking she would come home, that she would realize I had been right all along, that she needed me more than I needed her. One time I saw her at the grocery store. She was with Michelle, both of them laughing about something. She looked happy, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. When she saw me in the next aisle, her face changed, went cold and guarded. She grabbed Michelle's arm and they turned and walked the other way. I stood there holding a box of cereal, watching my daughter walk away from me, and I felt something crack inside my chest. But I still didn't reach out, still didn't open the letter, still didn't admit I might be wrong. The letter stayed in my drawer. By now, I barely noticed it. It had become part of the landscape of my room, just another object I walked past every day. Sometimes I would think about opening it, but then I would remember how much she had hurt me, how she had chosen to leave instead of respecting my rules, and I would leave it closed and tell myself I was protecting myself from more hurt. Rebecca left for college that fall. I didn't help her move, didn't give her money, didn't even call to wish her well. I told myself I was teaching her independence, that she needed to learn she couldn't just run away from her problems, that she needed me to set boundaries. But really, I was just hurt, just angry, just too proud to admit I might have handled things wrong.
Barbara told me later that Rebecca had called her, crying, the day she left for college, asked if I had said anything about her leaving, if I had asked Barbara to wish her well. Barbara told her no, that I hadn't mentioned it at all. Rebecca had been quiet for a moment, then said, "I guess that's my answer then." Barbara said she wanted to shake some sense into me, to tell me I was throwing away my relationship with my daughter over nothing. But she knew I wouldn't listen. I never listened. That was my problem. I always had to be right, always had to win, even when winning meant losing everything. Months turned into years. Rebecca would come back to town for holidays sometimes, but she stayed with my sister, never reached out to me, never tried to reconcile, which I told myself proved I had been right. She was stubborn and selfish and incapable of admitting when she was wrong, just like I had always said. I would see her sometimes, Christmas Eve at church. She would come with Barbara and her family, sit on the opposite side. We would see each other, but never speak, never acknowledge each other, like strangers who happened to be in the same building. And I would sit there in my pew singing carols, pretending my heart wasn't breaking, pretending I didn't notice my daughter sitting 20 feet away, refusing to look at me, pretending this was what I wanted. One Christmas, I think it was 5 years after she left, I saw Rebecca laughing with Barbara's kids. She looked so happy, so free. She had changed, was wearing different clothes, had a different haircut, had this confidence about her that I didn't remember, and I realized I didn't know this person. My own daughter had become a stranger and didn't reach out, still didn't open the letter, still convinced myself she was the one who needed to make the first move. The letter stayed in the drawer for 10 years, then 15, then longer. It became this artifact from a different time, a relic of the fight that ended my relationship with my daughter. Sometimes I would look at it and barely remember what we had fought about. A party? Curfew?
Something so small that it seemed impossible it had destroyed our family. But the damage was done. The years had passed. The bridge had burned, and I was too proud to rebuild it. Around year 15, I started having health problems. Nothing major, just the normal wear and tear of getting older. High blood pressure, arthritis, a minor heart scare that turned out to be nothing. And with each health issue, I would think about Rebecca, about how she didn't know, about how if something happened to me, she would find out from Barbara, how we would never get a chance to reconcile. But even then, even facing my own mortality, I couldn't bring myself to open that letter, couldn't bring myself to reach out. Pride had calcified into something harder over the years, something almost impossible to break through. Then, about 2 years ago, something happened that changed everything. I got a call from my sister. She was crying. She said Rebecca had been in a car accident, a bad one. She was in the hospital. It was serious. They didn't know if she would make it. I felt my whole world stop. My daughter, my baby, the child I had carried and raised and loved despite everything. She might die. And I hadn't spoken to her in 20 years, hadn't told her I loved her, hadn't apologized for the fight, hadn't read her letter. 20 years of stubborn pride, and now she might be gone forever. Barbara was still on the phone, crying, giving me details I couldn't process. Something about a drunk driver, about Rebecca's car being totaled, about emergency surgery, about a medically induced coma, about her chances being uncertain. And all I could think was that I had wasted 20 years. 20 years I could have known my daughter, could have been part of her life, could have fixed what I broke, and now it might be too late. I drove to the hospital in another state, drove straight through 8 hours, barely stopping. Didn't pack a bag, didn't call work, didn't think about anything except getting to my daughter. The drive was torture, every mile feeling like 100, every minute wondering if I would get there in time, if she would die before I could tell her I was sorry, that I loved her, that I had been wrong about everything. I walked into that hospital and asked for her room. The nurse said family only. I said I was her mother. She looked at her chart and said Rebecca had listed emergency contacts, but I wasn't one of them. That hurt worse than anything. I wasn't even listed as family. I had been erased from her life so completely that in an emergency, I wasn't the one they called. The nurse saw my face and must have felt bad for me. She said, "I'm sorry, I can't let you in unless you're on the list. Hospital policy." I stood there in that hallway, feeling like someone had ripped out my heart. I had driven 8 hours. My daughter was dying, and I couldn't even see her because 20 years ago I was too proud to open a letter. But my sister was there, and she vouched for me, let me come into the ICU room. And there was Rebecca, my little girl, except she was 37 years old now, a woman I barely recognized. Tubes and machines everywhere, bandages on her head, broken bones. The doctor said it was touch and go, that the next 48 hours would determine if she survived. She looked so fragile in that hospital bed, so small and broken. This was my daughter, my baby girl who I had nursed through colds and scraped knees, who I had taught to ride a bike, who I had held when she had nightmares. And I had missed 20 years of her life, hadn't seen her grow into this woman lying in front of me, hadn't been there for her college graduation or her first job or any of the moments that mattered, all because I was too stubborn to admit I was wrong. I sat by her bed for 2 days straight, held her hand, talked to her even though she couldn't hear me, apologized for everything, for being too controlling, for pushing her away, for letting pride ruin our relationship, for not reading her letter. I promised if she survived, I would make things right. I would finally read what she had written, would try to understand her side, would be the mother she deserved instead of the one that I had been. I told her about Tom, about how much I had loved him, about how losing him had broken something in me, how I had tried to control her because I was so scared of losing her too, how that fear had made me into someone I wasn't proud of, someone who valued being right more than being loved. I told her everything I should have said 20 years ago, everything I should have said instead of making ultimatums and slamming doors and putting letters in drawers. Barbara would come sit with me sometimes, bring me coffee and sandwiches I couldn't eat. She didn't say, "I told you so," even though she had every right to. She just sat with me, held my hand, let me cry. One time she said, "She's strong, Linda. She survived you. She'll survive this." I didn't know if that was meant to be comforting or an accusation. Maybe both. Rebecca survived, woke up after 3 days. The doctor said she was incredibly lucky. When she opened her eyes and saw me sitting there, she looked confused, asked my sister why I was there, didn't want me in her room. That hurt, but I understood. I had earned that rejection with 20 years of stubbornness. I tried to talk to her, but she turned her head away, said, "Please leave." Just those 2 words, said them in this flat, tired voice that cut right through me. Barbara touched my shoulder and said, "Come on, Linda, give her time." So I left, walked out of that hospital room knowing I deserved her rejection, knowing I had no right to be there, knowing I had lost the privilege of being her mother 20 years ago when I chose pride over love.
My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tear open the envelope. The paper inside was yellowed with age, fragile, like it might crumble if I wasn't careful. I unfolded it slowly, tears already streaming down my face before I even started reading. This was it. The bridge I had refused to cross for 20 years. The words my daughter had written when she was just 17 years old. The olive branch I had ignored. The letter was 3 pages long, written in Rebecca's teenage handwriting. I could see places where the ink had smeared, like she had been crying while she wrote. I started reading, and with every word, my heart broke a little more. She started by saying she was sorry. Sorry for fighting with me. Sorry for being difficult. Sorry for not being the daughter I wanted. She said she knew I was trying to protect her, but that she felt suffocated. That after Dad died, I had changed, become scared and controlling. That she understood I was grieving, but so was she, and she needed me to let her grieve in her own way. She wrote about how much she missed Dad, how hard it was being a teenager without a father, how she felt like she had lost both parents that day because I had shut down emotionally. She said she acted out because she wanted my attention, wanted me to see her pain. But I was so focused on rules and control that I couldn't see she was drowning. In the letter, she described specific moments I had completely forgotten. Times she had tried to talk to me about Dad, and I had shut her down, told her we didn't talk about sad things, that we needed to be strong and move forward. She wrote about her 16th birthday, about how she had cried all day because Dad wasn't there to see her get her driver's license, how I had told her to stop being dramatic, that crying wouldn't bring him back. She wrote, I needed my mom that day. I needed you to cry with me, to tell me it was okay to be sad. But you were so busy being strong that you forgot I was allowed to be weak. She wrote about the night she got caught drinking at the party, said she had been with kids who were talking about their fathers, about things their dads had taught them, and it hurt so much she couldn't breathe, so she drank to make the pain go away. She wrote, I wasn't trying to disrespect you or your rules. I was trying to stop hurting for just a few hours. And when you grounded me for 3 months, all I learned was that I couldn't come to you with my pain, that being honest about struggling was worse than lying and hiding. She wrote that she loved me, that she didn't want to leave, that she hoped this time apart would help us both, that maybe after you read this letter, we could talk, really talk, not fight, not yell, just talk like mother and daughter, like we used to before Dad died. She said she would call me in a week, that she hoped I would be ready to listen by then. The letter ended with, I love you, Mom. I know you don't believe that right now, but I do. I always will. Please read this. Please understand. Please don't let pride keep us apart. I need my mom. Not the mom who makes all the rules, not the mom who's always right, just my mom. The one who used to sing to me when I couldn't sleep. The one who used to make me pancakes shaped like hearts. The one who used to tell me everything would be okay. I need her back. Can we find our way back to that? I hope so. I'll call you next Sunday. I love you. Love, Rebecca. I sat on my bed holding that letter and sobbed. She had been 17 years old, just a kid, hurting and grieving and reaching out to me. And I had ignored her for 20 years. She said she would call me in a week. She probably had, and I probably didn't answer. Too angry, too stubborn, too convinced I was right. And I had missed 20 years with my daughter because of it. The worst part was reading her words and realizing how clear everything had been. She had laid it all out. Her pain, her grief, her need for me. And I had put it in a drawer, had walked past it every day for 20 years, had chosen my hurt feelings over understanding my daughter. What kind of mother does that? What kind of person values being right so much that they ignore their child's pain? I read the letter 3 times that night, then a 4th time, each time finding new layers of meaning, new evidence of my failures, new proof that I had been wrong about everything. She hadn't been disrespectful. She had been grieving. She hadn't been ungrateful. She had been drowning. She hadn't tried to hurt me. She had tried to survive, and I had punished her for it. All those years, her college graduation, her first job, relationships, life milestones, I had missed it all because I wouldn't open a letter, because I wouldn't admit I had been wrong, because I valued my pride more than my daughter. I called Rebecca the next day. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail, said I'd finally read her letter, that I was sorry, that I had been wrong about everything, that I wanted to try again if she would let me. I said I understood if she couldn't forgive me, that I had wasted 20 years of both our lives because of my stubbornness, but that I loved her, had always loved her, even when I was too proud to show it. My voice broke multiple times during that voicemail. I couldn't get through whole sentences without crying. I told her about sitting with her in the hospital, about how I was so scared I would lose her before I could apologize, about how seeing her in that hospital bed had made me realize what a fool I had been, how much time I had wasted, how much damage I had done. I told her I didn't deserve another chance, didn't deserve her forgiveness, but that I was begging for it anyway, that I would spend the rest of my life trying to make up for the 20 years I threw away. She didn't call back. Days passed, then weeks. I thought maybe it was too late, that I had waited too long, that 20 years of silence couldn't be undone with one voicemail and an apology. And maybe I was right. Maybe some things stay broken. I called Barbara and asked her if she had heard from Rebecca, if she was okay. Barbara said, yes, she's recovering well. The doctors are amazed at how quickly she's healing. But she wasn't talking about me, wasn't asking about my voicemail, wasn't ready to forgive me. Barbara said, can you blame her? You had 20 years to read that letter, 20 years to reach out, and you didn't. Not until she almost died. That's gotta hurt.
But then, about a month after I left that voicemail, Rebecca called me. Her voice was cold, distant. She said she got my message. She said she had waited 20 years for me to read that letter. 20 years hoping I would reach out. And I never did. Not until she almost died. Not until it was almost too late. She asked me why I never opened it, why I let pride destroy our relationship, why I chose being right over having a daughter. I tried to explain, tried to say I was hurt and stubborn and afraid, that I didn't know how to admit I was wrong, that every year that passed made it harder to break the silence. But my explanation sounded hollow even to me, because there was no good reason, no excuse for what I had done. I told her the truth, that I had been scared. Scared that if I read the letter, I would have to face the fact that I had been wrong, that I had been a bad mother, that losing Tom didn't excuse how I had treated her. I told her that keeping the letter closed was easier than admitting those things, that as the years went by, the shame of not opening it got bigger and bigger until it felt impossible to cross that bridge, that I had convinced myself she was the one who needed to apologize, when really it had always been me. Rebecca was quiet for a long time after I said that. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Finally, she said, I was 17, Mom. 17. I was a kid who had just lost her father and was trying to deal with a mother who had become a stranger. And I still tried to fix it. I still reached out to you. I poured my heart out in that letter and you threw it away. I didn't throw it away, I said weakly. I kept it. I couldn't open it. That's worse, Rebecca said, her voice cracking. You kept it for 20 years, walked past it every day, had every opportunity to read it, and you chose not to.
every single day for 20 years, you chose not to. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Knowing you had my words, my pain, my plea for understanding sitting in your drawer, and you just ignored it? I didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. It was worse. If I had thrown it away in anger, at least that would have been a decision made in the heat of the moment. But keeping it and refusing to open it, that was a choice I made every single day for 2 decades, a daily rejection of my own daughter. Rebecca said she needed time to think, to process, to decide if she even wanted a relationship with me after all these years. She said the letter had been her olive branch, her way of saying, let's fix this. And I had thrown it away, or worse, ignored it. She wasn't sure she could forgive that, wasn't sure she wanted to try. I told her I understood, that I would wait as long as she needed, that I knew I didn't deserve another chance, but I was begging for one anyway. She said she would think about it and hung up. I sat holding the phone, knowing I might never hear from her again, knowing I had no one to blame but myself. The next few months were agony. I would wake up every morning, hoping today would be the day Rebecca called, that today she would decide to give me another chance. But days turned into weeks, and my phone stayed silent. I started going to therapy, something I should have done 20 years ago. My therapist helped me understand how my grief over losing Tom had twisted into something toxic, how I had tried to control Rebecca because I felt so out of control after his death, how my fear of losing her had actually pushed her away. All things I should have figured out decades ago. All things that might have saved my relationship with my daughter if I had been willing to face them. I also started writing letters to Rebecca. Not sending them, just writing them. Letters where I told her all the things I should have said when she was 17. Letters where I apologized for specific moments I had failed her. Letters where I took responsibility instead of making excuses. My therapist said it was good for me, that even if Rebecca never read them, the act of writing them was helping me process my guilt and shame. But I hoped maybe someday I could give them to her, that maybe they would help her understand how sorry I was. That was 2 years ago. Rebecca and I have been slowly rebuilding our relationship since then. Very slowly. We talk on the phone maybe once a month, short conversations, careful. Both of us still guarded, still hurt, still figuring out if we can find our way back to each other after 2 decades apart. The conversations are awkward at first. Long pauses, careful words, neither of us quite knowing how to talk to the other. I ask about her recovery from the accident. She gives short answers. I ask about her job. She tells me she's a teacher now, elementary school, 3rd grade. I tell her that's wonderful, that she must be great with kids. She says, I try to be there for them in ways that matter, not just enforce rules. The unspoken criticism hangs between us. I swallow it, accept it, because I deserve it. Sometimes she asks me questions too, asks how I'm doing, if I'm still working. I tell her I retired from nursing 2 years ago, that I volunteer at a local food bank now, that I'm trying to do something good with my time, trying to be less selfish than I was. She doesn't respond to that, just says, that's good, in this neutral voice. But at least she's talking to me. At least she hasn't hung up. Each conversation ends with this uncertain silence, neither of us knowing how to say goodbye. Finally, one of us will say, okay, well, I should go. And the other says, okay, talk soon, even though we both know it won't be soon. It'll be another month, another careful, awkward phone call where we try to figure out if there's anything left to salvage. She told me eventually that she did call me a week after sending the letter, multiple times. I never answered.
never called back. She said after a few weeks of trying, she gave up, figured I had read the letter and chose not to respond, that my silence was my answer. And she was right. My silence was an answer. It said I valued being right more than being her mother. I called you 17 times, Rebecca told me during one of our phone calls about a year ago. I counted them in my phone log. 17 calls over 3 weeks. You never answered once. And I kept thinking, maybe she's busy. Maybe she's at work. Maybe she'll call me back tomorrow. But you never did. And after the 17th call, I realized you weren't going to, that you had made your choice. I asked her why she didn't leave a voicemail, why she didn't try harder. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them, because I was doing it again, making it her responsibility to fix what I broke, putting the burden on her instead of taking responsibility myself. Rebecca laughed, that same bitter laugh from 20 years ago. I was 17, Mom. 17. I was a kid who had just lost her father and was trying to deal with a mother who had become a stranger. And I still tried to fix it. I still reached out to you. I poured my heart out in that letter, and you threw it away. I didn't throw it away, I said weakly. I kept it. I couldn't open it. That's worse, Rebecca said, her voice cracking. You kept it for 20 years, walked past it every day, had every opportunity to read it, and you chose not to. Every single day for 20 years, you chose not to. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Knowing you had my words, my pain, my plea for understanding sitting in your drawer, and you just ignored it? I didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. It was worse. If I had thrown it away in anger, at least that would have been a decision made in the heat of the moment. But keeping it and refusing to open it, that was a choice I made every single day for 2 decades. A daily rejection of my own daughter. Rebecca said she needed time to think, to process, to decide if she even wanted a relationship with me after all these years. She said the letter had been her olive branch, her way of saying, let's fix this. And I had thrown it away, or worse, ignored it. She wasn't sure she could forgive that, wasn't sure she wanted to try. I told her I understood, that I would wait as long as she needed, that I knew I didn't deserve another chance, but I was begging for one anyway. She said she would think about it and hung up. I sat holding the phone, knowing I might never hear from her again, knowing I had no one to blame but myself. The next few months were agony. I would wake up every morning, hoping today would be the day I wasn't invited to the wedding. Rebecca told me Barbara was there. Walked her down the aisle since Tom couldn't. That hurt too, knowing my sister got to be part of that moment, and I didn't. But I have no right to complain. I gave up my place in her life 20 years ago. She showed me pictures once during one of our phone calls. She texted me wedding photos. Her in a beautiful white dress. David looking at her like she hung the moon. Barbara crying happy tears. Friends and family celebrating. A whole wedding I wasn't part of. I stared at those photos for hours after she sent them, looking at my daughter's happy face, knowing I should have been there, knowing I had no one to blame but myself for missing it. Rebecca also told me about her daughter, my granddaughter. Her name is Lily. She's 3 years old now. Rebecca sent me one photo of her, just one. A little girl with dark curly hair and Rebecca's eyes. My granddaughter. A child I've never met. A child who doesn't know I exist. Does she know about me? I asked Rebecca during that call. My voice was shaking. No,
Rebecca said simply. She's too young to understand. And honestly, I'm not sure what I would tell her. That she has a grandmother who chose not to be in my life for 20 years? That doesn't seem like something a 3-year-old needs to know. I asked if I could meet her someday, if maybe when she's older we could have a relationship. Rebecca was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I don't know, Mom. I'm still figuring out if I want you in my life. I need to protect my daughter. I need to make sure that if I let you into her world, you're not going to hurt her the way you hurt me. That was fair. More than fair. I had proven I couldn't be trusted with the hearts of the people I loved. Why would Rebecca risk her daughter experiencing what she had experienced? I told her I understood, that I would wait, that I would prove I had changed if she gave me the chance. Rebecca isn't sure I want me around her daughter. Doesn't know if she can trust me not to be the same controlling, stubborn person I was with her. And I can't blame her for that. If I were in her position, I wouldn't trust me either. I had 20 years to prove I was capable of change, capable of admitting when I was wrong, capable of putting someone else's needs before my pride. And I failed every single test. I see myself in you sometimes, Rebecca told me during one of our recent calls. The stubbornness, the need to be right. And it scares me. I don't want to be like you, Mom. I don't want Lily to feel about me the way I feel about you. Those words cut deep, but they were true. I had passed on my worst traits to my daughter, and now she was fighting against them, trying not to repeat my mistakes with her own child. At least she was self-aware enough to recognize it. I never had been. I keep the letter with me now, not in a drawer, but in my purse. I read it sometimes when I'm feeling sorry for myself, when I start to think about how unfair it is that I missed so much of Rebecca's life. The letter reminds me that it was my choice, my fault, my pride that stole those years from both of us. The letter is so worn now from me reading it over and over. The creases are starting to tear. The ink is fading in places. I had it professionally preserved a few months ago, laminated between clear sheets so it won't deteriorate anymore. My therapist asked me why I did that, why I wanted to preserve something that brought me so much pain. She told me it was my reminder, my punishment, my evidence of what pride cost. She said maybe someday I could forgive myself and put the letter away. But I don't think I ever will. People tell me I should forgive myself, that I was grieving, that I made a mistake, that 20 years of punishment is enough. But how do you forgive yourself for throwing away your relationship with your child, for choosing pride over love, for letting a yellow envelope sit unopened while your daughter grew up and built a life without you? My therapist says I'm stuck in a cycle of self-flagellation, that beating myself up doesn't help Rebecca or repair our relationship, that I need to forgive myself before I can truly move forward. But every time I look at that letter, every time I think about 17-year-old Rebecca crying as she wrote those words, every time I remember that she called me 17 times and I never answered, I can't forgive myself. Don't think I deserve to. The worst part is thinking about all the times I could have fixed it. Every day for 20 years, I could have opened that letter, could have called her, could have apologized, but I didn't. Day after day, year after year, I chose pride, chose being right, chose my hurt feelings over my daughter. And now I'm 71 years old with a daughter I barely know and a granddaughter I've never met.
I think about alternate versions of my life sometimes. Versions where I opened that letter the day it arrived, where I read Rebecca's words and realized I'd been wrong, where I called her immediately and apologized, where we talked through our pain and grief together, where I was part of her college years, her wedding, the birth of my granddaughter, where I didn't waste 20 years. Those alternate versions haunt me because they could have been real. They should have been real, but I threw them away. Rebecca asked me once why I'm trying now, why after 20 years of silence, her accident suddenly made me want a relationship. I told her the truth, that I had convinced myself she was the one who needed to come home, the one who needed to apologize, that I had spent 20 years waiting for her to admit she was wrong. And when she almost died, I realized how stupid that was, how I had wasted 20 years we could never get back, how my daughter had reached out to me at 17 and I had ignored her because I was too proud to listen. She said that's what hurt the most, not the fight, not the years of silence, but knowing that she had tried, that she had written me that letter pouring her heart out, apologizing even though she was just a kid dealing with grief and a controlling parent, and I had thrown it away. Or worse, kept it but refused to read it. That felt like the ultimate rejection to her, the ultimate proof that I didn't care about understanding her side. I gave you everything in that letter, Rebecca said, her voice breaking. Every hurt, every fear, every hope I had that we could fix things. I was vulnerable and honest in a way that was terrifying for a 17-year-old, and you couldn't even be bothered to read it. For 20 years, you couldn't be bothered. How am I supposed to get past that? I didn't have an answer because she was right. I had broken something fundamental, something that might never heal. Trust isn't rebuilt easily, especially after 20 years of betrayal. I've thought a lot in the past 2 years about why I didn't open that letter. I tell myself it was pride, anger, hurt, but I think it was really fear. Fear that if I read it, I would have to admit I was wrong, that I had been too controlling, that I had pushed her away, that my grief over losing Tom had made me into someone who valued control over connection. Reading that letter would have meant facing truths about myself I wasn't ready to face. So I let it sit in the drawer for 20 years, let my relationship with my daughter die, let her grow up and build a life without me, all because I was too scared to face the possibility that I had been wrong, that losing Tom didn't give me an excuse to lose Rebecca too, that being a grieving widow didn't give me the right to control and manipulate my daughter. The other day, Rebecca told me she wants to try family therapy, said if we're going to rebuild our relationship, we need professional help, that there's too much hurt, too much damage, too many years of silence to work through on our own. I agreed immediately. I would do anything, go anywhere, try anything to have my daughter back in my life. Our first session is next week. I'm terrified. Terrified she'll realize I'm not worth the effort, that 20 years apart has made us strangers who can't find their way back to each other, that some broken things stay broken, no matter how much you want to fix them. But I have to try.
because the alternative is living the rest of my life without my daughter, without knowing my granddaughter, without ever making things right. The therapist Rebecca found specializes in family estrangement, in helping families bridge gaps that seem unbridgeable. She sent me an intake form to fill out before our first session, questions about my relationship with Rebecca, about the fight, about why we stopped speaking, and I had to write it all down, had to see it in black and white. I refused to open a letter my 17-year-old daughter sent me. Writing those words made it all feel so much worse somehow, so much more shameful. I've started writing letters to Rebecca now, not sending them, just writing them, processing everything I never said, all the apologies I owe her, all the years I stole from both of us, all the ways I failed her as a mother. Maybe someday I'll give them to her. Maybe they'll help her understand that I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago, that grief and pride turned me into someone I'm ashamed of, that I would give anything to go back and open that letter the day it arrived. I have 47 letters written so far, one for every major moment I missed, one for her high school graduation, one for when she left for college, one for her college graduation, one for meeting David, one for her wedding day, one for when she found out she was pregnant, one for Lily's birth. Each letter is an apology, an acknowledgement of what I missed, what I chose to miss. My therapist has me write them as part of my healing process, but really, I write them because it's the only way I know how to process the magnitude of what I've done. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only go forward and hope that forward leads somewhere better than where we've been. My sister asked me what I would tell other mothers in my situation, mothers who are fighting with their teenage daughters, who are stuck in pride and stubbornness, who think they're teaching lessons about respect. I told her I would say this: open the letter, answer the phone, put your pride aside. Your child is reaching out to you. They might not be doing it perfectly. They might be angry or disrespectful or wrong about some things, but they're trying. And if you ignore that attempt at connection, you might look up one day and realize 20 years have passed, that your child is a stranger, that you've missed everything that mattered, and you can never get those years back. I would tell them about sitting in a hospital room, watching their daughter hooked up to machines, realizing that pride isn't worth anything if you're alone, that being right means nothing if you've lost the person you're supposed to love most in the world. I would tell them about opening a 20-year-old letter and realizing your daughter had given you every chance to fix things, and you threw it all away. I would tell them that being right isn't worth being alone, that winning the fight means losing your child, that pride is a cold comfort when you're 71 years old with a yellow envelope full of regrets and a daughter who barely speaks to you. I would tell them to read the damn letter before it's too late, before 20 years pass, before your child almost dies and you realized you wasted the most precious thing you had. I would tell them about the sound of their daughter's voice on the phone, cold and distant, asking why it took 20 years for you to care, about having a granddaughter you've never met, about missing a wedding, graduations, all the moments that make up a life,
About sitting in a therapist's office at 71 years old, trying to rebuild a relationship with your adult daughter who has every right to never speak to you again. And I would tell them that even if you get a second chance like I did, it's not the same. You don't get those years back. You don't undo the damage. You don't erase the hurt. You just try to build something new from the ashes of what you destroyed. And sometimes, even with all the trying in the world, it's not enough. Rebecca and I may never be close like we were before Tom died, may never fully heal from 20 years of silence, but we're trying. And that's more than I deserve, more than I dared hope for after that phone call from the hospital. She's giving me a chance I don't deserve, and I'm not going to waste it. Every Sunday evening, I wait for Rebecca's call. She calls me most Sundays now. Not every Sunday, but most. We talk for maybe 20 minutes, sometimes less. Sometimes we even laugh about something. Those moments when we laugh together feel like miracles, like proof that maybe, just maybe, we can find our way back to each other. Last Sunday, Rebecca told me that Lily asked about grandparents, asked why she only has one grandma, David's mother, when other kids have two or more. Rebecca said she told Lily that her other grandma lives far away, that maybe someday they would meet. It wasn't a promise, it was barely a maybe, but it was something. A door cracked open instead of slammed shut. I keep that yellow letter in my purse now, look at it every day, a reminder of what pride costs, of what stubbornness steals, of how much time you can lose in the space between a fight and forgiveness. It's been 22 years since Rebecca wrote those words, since she reached out to her grieving, angry mother and asked for understanding. And it took me 20 of those years to finally listen. Some mistakes you can fix. Some apologies work even when they're decades late. Some relationships can survive 20 years of silence, but they're never the same. They're scarred, careful, missing all the years that should have filled the space between then and now. And those missing years, those lost decades, they can never be recovered, never be replaced. They're just gone. Forever. I have a photo album now, not of memories I was part of, but of memories I missed. Rebecca sent me some photos after we started talking again, milestones I wasn't there for. I put them in an album and sometimes I look through it. Rebecca in her college graduation cap and gown, smiling with Barbara. Rebecca and David on their wedding day. Lily's first birthday party. Each photo is proof of what I threw away, what I chose to miss. I keep the album next to my bed. Another reminder, another punishment, another way to make sure I never forget what pride cost me. That's what pride costs, what stubbornness steals, what refusing to open a letter, answer a call, or admit you're wrong can take from you. 20 years of your daughter's life, 20 years of memories you should have made together, 20 years you can never get back, no matter how sorry you are, no matter how much you've changed, no matter how hard you try to make things right. So if you have a letter you haven't opened, a call you haven't returned, a child you're too proud to reach out to, do it now, today, this minute, before another day passes, before another year is lost,
before you wake up and realize it's been 20 years and your child is a stranger and you've missed everything that mattered. Because the time you lose to pride is time you never get back. And regret, I've learned, is the heaviest burden there is to carry. Don't be like me. Don't let a yellow envelope sit in a drawer for 20 years. Don't let pride steal your child from you. Don't wait until they're lying in a hospital bed, fighting for their life, to realize what you've lost. Don't waste 20 years convincing yourself you're right, when really you're just alone. Read the letter, answer the phone, swallow your pride, because 20 years from now, when you're 71 years old and your daughter is a stranger and you have a granddaughter you've never met, you'll wish you had. You'll wish you had opened it the day it arrived. You'll wish you had been the adult, the parent, the one who chose love over being right. And by then, it might be too late to fix what you broke. Or, if you're lucky like me, if your daughter is more gracious than you deserve, you might get a second chance, but it won't be the same. It will be scarred and careful, missing all the years that should have filled the space between then and now. And those missing years, those lost decades, they can never be recovered, never be replaced. They're just gone forever. I have a photo album now, not of memories I was part of, but of memories I missed. Rebecca sent me some photos after we started talking again, milestones I wasn't there for. I put them in an album and sometimes I look through it. Rebecca in her college graduation cap and gown, smiling with Barbara. Rebecca and David on their wedding day. Lily's first birthday party. Each photo is proof of what I threw away, what I chose to miss. I keep the album next to my bed. Another reminder, another punishment, another way to make sure I never forget what pride cost me.